Some games age like fine wine, years, even decades later, and they still look incredible. But what if I told you that some PlayStation 2 games are so visually stunning that they could easily pass as modern releases? That's right, titles from over 20 years ago that still hold up against today's gaming standards. In this video, we'll dive into 10 PS2 games that defied their time, pushing the console to its limits and leaving a legacy that modern games still struggle to match. Let's get started. Final Fantasy XII pushed the PlayStation 2 to its absolute limits, delivering visuals that were nothing short of breathtaking. Released in 2006, when the PS3 was already on the horizon, this game proved that the PS2 still had a lot to offer. Even today, its artistic direction and level of detail remain impressive, standing as one of the most visually striking entries in the franchise. Unlike its predecessor, Final Fantasy X, which was already a technical marvel at the time, Final Fantasy XII took things even further. Its massive open environments, dynamic lighting, and intricate character designs made it look years ahead of its time. The game's world, Ivalice, felt alive, with richly detailed cities, sprawling landscapes, and battle animations that showcased the full potential of the hardware. The game also introduced a revolutionary combat system that set it apart from previous entries. Unlike the traditional turn-based battles of its predecessors, Final Fantasy XII implemented the Gambit system, allowing players to program party members with customizable commands that dictated their actions in real time. This made combat feel fluid, strategic, and highly customizable, as players could fine-tune their team's behavior to adapt to different challenges. The transition from random encounters to seamless battles in open environments added a new layer of immersion, making every fight feel like a natural part of the world rather than a separate battle screen. Years later, the remastered version, Final Fantasy XII: The Zodiac Age, elevated the experience even more. With enhanced textures, updated lighting, and smoother performance, it reinforced just how well-crafted the original game was. Soul Calibur 3 was a true visual showcase for the PlayStation 2, proving that the console still had plenty of power left, even in its final years. While the franchise had already impressed players on the Dreamcast and PS2 with previous entries, the third installment took things to another level, delivering some of the most detailed character models and dynamic battle arenas seen on the system. One of the biggest highlights of Soul Calibur 3 was its stunning stage design. Each environment felt alive, with intricate backgrounds, moving elements, and rich textures that gave every battle a sense of grandeur. The lighting effects and fluid character animations only enhanced the experience, making every fight feel like an epic duel. One of the standout innovations of Soul Calibur 3 was its character creation mode, a first for the series at the time. Unlike previous entries, which only featured a fixed roster of fighters, this game allowed players to craft their own custom warriors, choosing from various fighting styles, armor sets, and weapons. This feature added immense replay value, as players could experiment with different builds and create their own unique combatants. Combined with the game's Chronicles of the Sword mode, a strategic, story-driven campaign where custom characters played a central role, this addition made Soul Calibur 3 feel deeper and more personal than any of its predecessors. Despite being followed by more graphically advanced entries, Soul Calibur 3 remains one of the most visually striking games in the franchise. Gran Turismo 4 was a technical masterpiece that pushed the PlayStation 2 beyond what anyone thought was possible. While many games on the console struggled with hardware limitations, this one delivered crisp visuals, fluid performance, and an impressive level of detail that still holds up today. It wasn't just about speed and realism, it was about setting a new standard for racing games. What made Gran Turismo 4 stand out was its ability to run in 1080i, something almost unheard of on the PS2. At a time when most games were locked at lower resolutions, seeing this level of clarity on Sony's aging hardware was nothing short of revolutionary. The car models were incredibly detailed, the lighting effects were ahead of their time, and the vast selection of real-world tracks added an extra layer of authenticity. One of the most innovative features introduced in Gran Turismo 4 was its photo mode, a groundbreaking addition that allowed players to capture high-quality images of their cars in stunning detail. At a time when in-game photography was almost non-existent, this mode let players set up shots in various scenic locations, adjust camera angles, and fine-tune focus for truly professional-looking images. This mode was so well received that it became a staple in later entries of the series and even influenced other racing games to follow suit. Even compared to modern racing titles, Gran Turismo 4 remains a standout. The attention to realism, the physics engine, and the sheer number of cars made it an experience that few other racing games could match. Okami is a masterpiece that transformed video games into living art. Developed by Hideki Kamiya and released on the PlayStation 2, it stood out not for photorealistic graphics, but for its breathtaking cel-shaded visuals, inspired by traditional Japanese sumi paintings. Every scene feels like a brushstroke on a canvas, making it one of the most visually unique games ever created. What makes Okami so remarkable isn't just its style, it's how seamlessly that artistic vision blends with gameplay. The celestial brush mechanic allows players to literally paint their way through challenges. Instead of relying on traditional combat mechanics, players could pause the action and draw symbols to manipulate the environment, summoning wind, cutting obstacles, or even restoring life to withered trees. This mechanic not only made Okami stand out from other action-adventure games, but also reinforced its central theme of creation and renewal, making the player feel like a divine artist shaping the world. Even today, few games manage to replicate this level of artistic integration. Despite launching during a time when hyper-realistic graphics were becoming the industry standard, Okami proved that a strong artistic direction can make a game timeless. Its beauty carried over to later versions, with ports to the Nintendo Wii and high-definition remasters on modern consoles. With a sequel now in development, fans are eager to see how the franchise evolves. If Okami 2 manages to capture even a fraction of the original's magic, it could once again redefine what it means for a game to be a true work of art. Before we move on to the next game, I need your help. If you're enjoying the content and want to support the channel, consider using the affiliate links in the description. Any purchase you make after clicking on the link helps out, and it doesn't cost you anything extra. It's a simple way to support the channel while getting something for yourself. Now, let's get back to the list. Rogue Galaxy is one of those games that refuses to age. Even after nearly 2 decades, it still holds up visually and gameplay-wise, proving just how ahead of its time it was. Developed by Level 5, the same studio behind Dark Cloud and Dragon Quest VIII, this RPG delivered a vast, colorful universe with a unique art style that made it stand out from everything else on the PlayStation 2. What makes Rogue Galaxy so visually impressive is its masterful use of cel shading, giving the game a vibrant, almost anime-like aesthetic that remains stunning even by today's standards. The environments are diverse and full of life, from bustling space stations to exotic alien planets, each designed with an incredible level of detail. Unlike many games of its era, it didn't rely on pre-rendered backgrounds, making the world feel truly immersive. One of the most innovative features in Rogue Galaxy was its seamless, no-loading screen world. At a time when most RPGs relied heavily on frequent loading transitions between areas, this game allowed players to explore planets, dungeons, and cities without interruptions, making the experience feel truly fluid and immersive. It was one of the first console RPGs to achieve this level of continuity, setting a new benchmark for open-world design. Additionally, it featured an advanced weapon synthesis system that let players combine weapons to create more powerful ones, adding an extra layer of depth to the gameplay. Years later, the game was remastered for the PlayStation 4, further enhancing its visuals while keeping its original charm intact. For a deeper dive into Rogue Galaxy, including a full analysis and behind-the-scenes details, check out the video linked in the card and description. Xenosaga was a bold step forward for Monolith Soft, a studio that had already proven its storytelling prowess with Xenogears on the PlayStation 1. While Xenogears delivered an unforgettable experience with its intricate narrative and stunning 2D sprite work, Xenosaga aimed to redefine the JRPG genre by fully embracing 3D visuals, voice acting, and cinematic storytelling on the PlayStation 2. At a time when RPGs were evolving rapidly, Xenosaga stood out with its ambitious scope. The game featured highly detailed character models, expressive facial animations, and a deep sci-fi aesthetic that felt leagues ahead of many titles on the same platform. The cutscenes, rendered with an almost anime-like quality, gave players a sense of immersion rarely seen in JRPGs of the era. Combined with a complex battle system and a heavily lore-driven world, it was clear that Monolith Soft was pushing the PS2's hardware to its limits. One of the most groundbreaking aspects of Xenosaga was its sheer reliance on full-length cinematic cutscenes, some of which stretched over 30 minutes, an unheard-of feat in the genre at the time. Unlike most JRPGs that balanced gameplay and storytelling in short bursts, Xenosaga leaned heavily into its narrative-driven approach, often making players feel like they were experiencing an interactive anime. It was also one of the first console RPGs to feature fully voiced dialogue throughout, adding a level of immersion that was rarely seen outside of big-budget Western games. This commitment to storytelling set Xenosaga apart, making it one of the most ambitious RPG projects of its time. The series had its challenges, and not all of its ambitious ideas landed perfectly, but one thing was undeniable: Xenosaga set a new standard for cinematic storytelling in RPGs. Valkyrie Profile 2 Silmeria is a masterpiece of visual design, a game so stunning that it's hard to believe it was developed for the PS2. The level of detail, the beautifully crafted environments, and the fluidity of the animations make it stand out even among modern RPGs. Every scene feels like a work of art, blending vibrant colors with a dark, mythological atmosphere that perfectly complements the game's Norse-inspired story. Coming from the original Valkyrie Profile on the PS1, which featured 2D sprites and hand-drawn backgrounds, the jump to full 3D in this sequel was remarkable. The character models were incredibly detailed for the time, with smooth animations and dynamic camera work that made battles feel cinematic. The lighting effects, particle details, and environmental design made it one of the most visually ambitious games of its era. One of the most innovative mechanics introduced in Valkyrie Profile 2 Silmeria was its photon system, which allowed players to manipulate enemies and interact with the environment in a way rarely seen in RPGs of the time. By shooting photons, players could temporarily freeze enemies in place or even swap positions with them to access otherwise unreachable areas. This added a strategic layer to both exploration and combat, blending puzzle-solving elements with traditional RPG mechanics. Even today, playing Valkyrie Profile 2 feels like rediscovering a hidden gem. The game's artistic direction has aged beautifully, proving that strong visual design can outlast even the most cutting-edge technology. If it were released today with a slight graphical update, it could easily pass as a modern title. Burnout 3 Takedown wasn't just another racing game, it was pure chaos on wheels. Instead of simply crossing the finish line first, the real thrill came from taking down your opponents in spectacular, slow-motion crashes. Every impact, every wreck, every high-speed collision felt rewarding, making it one of the most exhilarating arcade racers ever made. What set Burnout 3 apart was how it blended speed, destruction, and style. The game had an incredible sense of momentum, with cars moving at breakneck speeds, weaving through traffic, and launching into opponents with explosive force. The crash mode was a highlight, encouraging players to create the most devastating pileups possible. One of the game's most groundbreaking features was the introduction of the impact time mechanic. For the first time in the series, players could slow down time after crashing, steering their wreckage mid-air to cause even more destruction. This added a whole new layer of strategy, allowing players to take down rivals even after losing control. It wasn't just about speed anymore, it was about calculated chaos, making every crash a potential game-changer. And then there was the soundtrack, packed with high-energy rock and punk tracks that perfectly matched the game's adrenaline-fueled action. Even today, Burnout 3 holds up surprisingly well. Its visuals, especially the damage physics and motion blur effects, were ahead of their time. If this game ever got a proper remaster, it would still outshine many modern racing titles. Ico is one of those rare games that feel timeless. Released early in the PlayStation 2's life cycle, it was a visionary project led by Fumito Ueda, who would later create Shadow of the Colossus and The Last Guardian. From the very beginning, Ico stood out with its minimalist storytelling, breathtaking environments, and an art direction that felt like a living painting. The game's atmosphere is its strongest point. One of the most groundbreaking aspects of Ico was its innovative use of AI-driven companion mechanics. Unlike many games where NPCs simply follow the player, Yorda is an integral part of both the gameplay and the story. Her movement feels natural, yet vulnerable, reinforcing the player's responsibility to protect her. The game also introduced a unique hand-holding mechanic where Ico physically guides Yorda, creating an emotional connection that was rarely seen in games at the time. This level of interaction made Ico one of the first titles to truly explore the concept of non-verbal storytelling through gameplay. Instead of relying on long cutscenes or heavy exposition, Ico immerses the player in its world through subtle visual storytelling. The vast, ancient castle, bathed in soft lighting and filled with intricate architecture, creates a hauntingly beautiful experience. The character animations, even by today's standards, feel incredibly fluid and lifelike. Years later, the remastered version for the PlayStation 3 only proved how ahead of its time the original was. Even without massive graphical overhauls, the game's art direction remained just as striking, showing that true beauty in gaming isn't just about high-resolution textures, but about vision and execution. God of War 2 was a technical masterpiece that defied expectations. Released in 2007, when the gaming industry was already shifting towards the HD era with the Xbox 360, Nintendo Wii, and PlayStation 3, this game proved that the PS2 still had plenty of fight left in it. The level of polish, cinematic presentation, and sheer scale of its set pieces were unheard of for the console. Right from the opening sequence, God of War 2 makes a statement. The battle against the colossal statue of Rhodes is nothing short of jaw-dropping, setting the stage for an adventure filled with larger-than-life moments. The environments are meticulously detailed, the character animations fluid, and the combat as brutal and satisfying as ever. Every encounter feels epic, every boss fight is a spectacle, and the game constantly pushes the PS2 beyond its limits. What truly set God of War 2 apart was how it blurred the line between gameplay and cinematics. Instead of relying on pre-rendered cutscenes like most action games of its time, it seamlessly integrated real-time combat, exploration, and scripted sequences into a single, fluid experience. Kratos could transition from platforming to combat and then straight into a colossal boss fight without a single loading screen, making every moment feel immersive and uninterrupted. This level of technical mastery was rarely seen on consoles back then, and helped God of War 2 cement its reputation as one of the most cinematic action games ever created. And that's it. Now, I want to hear from you. What do you think about these games? Did any of them surprise you, or do you have a favorite that still looks incredible today? Drop a comment below. We read and respond to every single one. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us keep bringing you more great content. See you in the next one.